And I'm going to give you a little insight because Roxena, who's the subject of the story, her granddaughter was my great grandmother. Well, for the first 18 months of my life, we lived in her little one-bedroom house in Santa Cruz, just down the road. And at 18 months, my mom and dad, I was the oldest, we moved to Southern California, where I was raised, and my sister, and wonderful life. And we traveled because my dad was one of five, and but his family was all here in Santa Quin and Nephi. And so we made that trip up here at least a couple times a year, sometimes more. So that, family reunions, remember when it was Decoration Day, those types of events. And it was great. And my great grandmother, her name was Elmira Allen, spelled A-H-L-I-N. She remained there. She passed away in 1969, just months before my wife and I were married. And so we had many opportunities to visit with my grandma Allen. And she told me, nothing in print. She told me the stories of her grandmother, who told them to her personally. Okay. And then my great grandma, after hearing and growing up with those stories, well, she told me. And I had nothing in print until, I don't know, 25 years ago or so. And then we had some of these same stories in print that we found published. And the story that I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but I'm going to take excerpts from her writing. And this is probably the biggest event in my life, personally. It changed my life. Okay. Growing up in Southern California with zero involvement, I shouldn't say zero, but no involvement in the church. We were not raised active in the LDS faith. I had no knowledge really of the church other than a little bit of family history related to the church. And 3 generations were totally inactive. And even on my dad's side, he stopped going to church when he was 15, when his dad died. The Lofgrans in Santa Quin. So this stories, and one in particular that I'm going to relate to you, changed my life. When I was, again, after not being involved with church, and just a few friends from school that, a couple in particular that tried to, I was the continuous fellowshipping challenge, Hey, I get a couple of the deacons and, hey, can you please stop by and see if you can get Jeff to come to priesthood next week? Remember when it was in the morning? And trying to get me out of bed? Like, sure, that's going to happen. And so, but it did. I did go a couple of times. I went to, I'm sorry, remind me to use this microphone. I went to Fathers and Sons with other dads. Okay. There was only one time that I was able to go with my own father. So with no further ado, so this same story has been told to family and transcribed. And there's a couple of versions that are just slightly different, and it's just a difference of minute differences. So this is all about Roxena, Mecham, Carter. All right. And I'm going to read two different excerpts. The second one is, to me, the most important. She says, "My name is Roxena Mecham Carter, the daughter of Edward Mecham and Irene Courier Mecham. My father joined the Mormon Church when I was 7 years of age. He sold his farm in Pennsylvania to go with the Saints to Missouri in September 1837. We traveled 2 months, stopping in Indiana 3 weeks with my father's brother, Moses Mecham. My father persuaded him to go with us to Missouri, although he hadn't yet joined the church. My father's brother, Ephraim, came with us also. Dimmick Huntington came to father and told him not to cross the river, for the mobs were killing the people. They had killed 15 that night. I stayed out with father in the rain all night in a wheat field when he was guarding our house. Mother was too sick to leave the house. They killed our neighbor's 15-year-old boy that night, along with a little boy and girl, and threw their bodies in an old dry well. The older boy's name was Nelson, and I used to go to school with him. The little boy was named Smith. They also killed his father. Joseph Young covered them up with brush." All right. Now, on to the next excerpt. And this is, she's a little bit older now, and they're in Nauvoo, but they wanted to build a home. They bought a lot in Golden Point. Golden Point is approximately, it's 3 to 5 miles south of Nauvoo on the Mississippi, same side on the east side, just down from Nauvoo. So she goes on to say, later we moved 5 miles below Nauvoo to a place called Golden Point. Father bought a piece of land in a field and built a shanty to live in until he could build a house. Father went away one afternoon and didn't get back until late in the night. While he was gone, a big thunderstorm came up. It happened that a young man named Henry Snelson was plowing in the field. It rained so hard, Mother got him to come in the house, and the storm was so bad, he stayed all night because we were alone. Father came at 11 o'clock. Just then, the house was struck by lightning and nearly all torn from over our heads. I was struck, and to all appearance, I was dead. For a half hour, my eyes were knocked loose from my head. Father pressed them back as he laid hands on me. He sent Henry Snelson a half-mile away to get Brother Chase to come to our assistance, and he told him I was killed. Mother was burned by the lightning and stunned. Father was also stunned for a few minutes. He laid hands on me and asked the Lord to restore me to life 3 times before Brother Chase got there. He and Mother would not give me up, and his faith brought me back. I began to struggle for breath just as Brother Chase got on the doorstep, and he moved us to his house in the night. I was blind for 4 weeks from the effects of the lightning. We all went into Nauvoo to hear Joseph Smith, our beloved prophet, preach his last sermon before he went to Carthage jail to give himself up. It was just 1 week and 1 day before he was killed. He preached under a bowery. I had come to my eyesight just enough to see the wave of his hand through the light. But I slowly recovered my sight, and the Lord heard our prayers. We then moved into Nauvoo the day he was killed. I went with my parents and the saints to meet them as their bodies were brought into his mansion. We went about 2.5 miles to meet them We went the next day to view their bodies as they lay there, an embodiment of all that was good and pure. It was a sad day, one never to be forgotten. We also attended their funeral. My father, with 12 other men, buried them in the Nauvoo house cellar at the hour of midnight. And after they heard the mob had found out where they were, they took them and buried them in another place. Even after they had so brutally killed them, the mob was not satisfied. The bloodthirsty villains were still wishing to do more, for they offered a big reward for their heads. Well, now I've racked my brain. I've tried to find church records, official church records, who were the men that buried the prophet Joseph and Hiram. I've not found anything on that regard, but my family history says Edward Mecham and his and 12 other men were the ones that did that. Well, anyway, that story, and especially being a kid, you can imagine the story about your great-great-grandmother being struck by lightning, her eyes knocked out of her head, her father pressing them back in and giving a prayer, and sent the boy a half-mile away in this storm to come back. That took some time. So it's a miracle. Absolutely, it's a miracle. The priesthood brought her back. There's no question about it. And that story has stuck with me all my life. But it made a difference when I was 21. That is what changed my life. And I appreciate you being here, and I'm tickled that I could share that with you. And if any of you have anything related to any of that, I'd like to hear from you. All right. Thank you.